I just can't seem to be eating healthy. The minute I eat fruits and vegetables, I feel unwell. I feel bloated and I don't feel really good. Have you heard this statement, or have you made this statement yourself, especially when you've tried to eat healthy? And do you know the reason why? Hi, I'm Dr. Chellam, founder of Holistic and Integrative Center of Novi, the best place for you to find your best doctor, and that is always you. So that's a common statement we hear from people who are trying to eat healthy and really find it difficult to digest fruits and vegetables. If you have not seen my article about constipation in Medium, which is a blog site, please go ahead and try to search for my name on Medium and read that article. What I'm going to try and explain in this video is how the digestive process works, just an overall view, and why is that some people, when they try to switch over to eating healthy, actually feel unwell. So hopefully you can see this board and it looks somewhat like a digestive system. So when you have food, where does digestion really begin? When I ask these questions, most people answer in the mouth. The answer is actually in your brain. So give this a thought. If you think about a lemon or lime, you will find that you think hard enough about it, you can actually feel the sour taste of the lime in your mouth, and you'll find that you do have salivation. Or if you think of your favorite dessert, you would actually begin to have a lot of saliva form. And the reason for that, the mind, it really cannot differentiate between just a thought and reality. And it behaves like as if something is already there. Now, this is very important to understand in life itself, because a lot of times your thought processes really kind of design your life. So it's very important to think very positive. But we're going to talk about the digestive process. So if you actually think about food in general, the salivation begins. But in the mouth, there are two things that affect your digestion. One is your teeth, and the second one is the saliva. The saliva has one main enzyme we call the amylase. Now, amylase, what it does is it actually breaks down carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are what we call polysaccharides. That means lots of sugar, really as chains. They're like a big chain or string of sugar. Now, the amylase actually breaks it down. Now, the reason it does that is it tries to help with the digestive process, because the ultimate goal of digestion is to extract the nutrients from the food to be used in our metabolic processes. So it's very important to chew your food. Now, a lot of times you'll find people who will just take a mouthful of food and swallow it without actually chewing. That's probably the worst habit that you can ever have. Take your time to chew. They say usually 32 times. Most people cannot practically do that, but try to make it like 15 or 16 times each mouthful of food. The reason you're chewing is you're mixing the enzymes with the food so the food can get broken down. Now, once it gets broken down, it goes down this pipe called the esophagus, right? The esophagus is basically trying to push the food down into the stomach. There's a little valve there. Now, this is a very interesting side note to this. The esophagus cannot tolerate acid, but the stomach, the pot right below that pipe, is filled with acid. This acid is at a pH of 1.25 to 2.25. So it's really acidic. So food that is broken down by the amylase and the saliva also kills some of the bacteria. All of that comes, and this valve should open and send the food into this pot called the stomach. If for some reason the food is not the right kind, and I'll show you why that happens in a few minutes. So in the stomach, what really happens is the acid environment kills the rest of the bacteria and breaks down your protein, your carbohydrates, again, getting it ready for digestion. Now, the time in the stomach is somewhere between 15 minutes to 3 hours, depending on the type of food. Let's say 3 hours have passed and no food comes out of the stomach into the small intestine. A signal goes back to the brain and says, hey, we've had this food for 3 hours sitting in the stomach. So the brain signals the stomach back and says, produce more acid, break it down so it can get digested and get to the next station. Now, it does not happen if the food is of a certain type, particularly if it's deep fried or if it's high fatty foods or very like saturated fats, like in whole milk or butter or ghee or any of those things that requires a lot of breaking down. Now, when that happens, a lot of acid gets produced, and sometimes it can really kind of reflux back into the esophagus. Remember, the esophagus cannot tolerate acid. And we find in the last few decades, there's a 500% increase in the reflux symptoms. So our food habits have changed so much that the esophagus is getting affected. Now, what is the significance of this? Though it hasn't been shown in studies, we have a higher increase or incidence of what we call adenocarcinoma of the esophagus. Now, why is that important? Esophageal cancer is usually in smokers and drinkers. These people are non-smokers and non-drinkers. It's really the kind of food and the acid reflux that's probably putting them at a higher risk. However, that's something to keep in mind because reflux cannot be simply treated with medications. You got to address the kind of food you're actually eating. So the next step, after about 3 hours, let's say the food comes down. It comes to the first part of the small intestine called duodenum. The duodenum has ducts that comes from the bile ducts as well as from the pancreas. So the bile salts actually emulsify fat, help with the breakdown of fat, whereas the pancreatic enzymes break down protein. Why is this important? If it's really broken down, then the next step is the small intestine. The small intestine has the absorption function. It also has certain specific bacteria which will help extract vitamins or create the vitamins and the neurotransmitters which help our brain function or help us. Somehow there's a connection between the gut and the brain. We won't go into that, but it's important to know it. So the food actually gets absorbed at this level. However, if there's a problem with digestion, which means you have a dry mouth or you have a lot of infection in your teeth, remember when the carbohydrates get broken down, they get fermented to sugar and alcohol. If there's a lot of sugar formation and you don't wash your mouth after you eat, you can start having gum disease. And then if the acid in the stomach is not enough or you don't have enough bile salts because your gallbladder has been removed, or if the pancreatic enzymes are not produced enough because you've been drinking alcohol on a chronic basis or you've been eating a high-fat food or unhealthy food for years, you don't have a good digestive system. Then when you actually turn around and eat healthy, the food doesn't get broken down easily. And then you start having bloating sensation. Now you see how that can happen? Because a small intestine can only absorb from broken down food. If the food is not adequately broken down, you're going to be bloated for a long time and actually feel uncomfortable. Let's say you go through that process. Finally, it goes into the large intestine. The colon has pretty much a very unique job. Its job is to remove the right amount of water. When it removes the right amount of water, you have regular bowel movements. If it removes too much, you have constipation. If you remove too less, you have diarrhea. So it really becomes important to understand the function of the colon, and the bacteria in the colon is very different from the small intestine. So for us not to be unwell when you're eating healthy food, a few things have to happen. Number one, make sure you're well hydrated. Number two, change one meal at a time. Don't try to make a change all of a sudden, especially if you're older. Now, younger folks can actually switch their diet over and feel perfectly fine. So if you have a bloating sensation eating vegetables and fruits, it's not like you cannot eat vegetables and fruits or it's not the right food for you. It means your digestive system requires a lot of work. I hope that information helps you. Once again, I'm Dr. Chellam, founder of Holistic and Integrative Center of Novi, the best place for you to find your best doctor, and that is always you.